Hello. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about a section that I missed this week, and it's going to be on group therapy. So physical conditions of a group would be a collection of individuals with common interests, purpose, or values. The function of a group includes socialization, governance, empowerment, normative influences, support, task completion, camaraderie, and information sharing. So socialization includes like teaching about different social norms, where governance is about like oversight and direction. Empowerment is collective power for change. Normative influence would be enforcing norms. So this one for me would be like going to a parenting group. So talking about norms that are normal for your teenagers or problems that you're going through. Support would be security from involvement. So like going to an AA meeting would be a good example. Task completion. This includes achieving goals that are beyond an individual's capacity. So maybe being part of a group project or a volunteer committee. And then camaraderie, which would be joy from significant interactions. And then informative sharing, and this is from learning from others. There are different types of groups, and this includes task groups, which are like project teams. They focus more on outcomes and deadlines. There's teaching, so this could be like tutoring groups. It's very knowledge based, so you're learning from each other. And then supportive therapeutic, this is where people share thoughts and manage stress. So a good idea would be like an AA group. So somebody that's going through AA that is an alcoholic may go to a group to talk about their feelings when it comes to their addictions, talk about like relapsing and things like that, and get support from others. And then we also have self-help. So this one is kind of similar to supportive therapeutic, but this one is more member run for specific needs or conditions. So when I think of this one, I think of like people that are going through like grief, I guess. So, or like a new mother's group. Like they focus on helping each other with specific things. Next we have therapeutic versus therapeutic groups versus group therapy. So they sound similar, but they're actually kind of different. So group therapy, it has a leader that usually has a degree of some type and is very specialized. With group therapy, there's also a framework that the group has to follow, and it's kind of more strict and focuses on interpersonal functions. And therapeutic groups are not psychotherapy designed. The group relationship is the focus, the group's relation focused, and they pick specific issues, and then the leader just needs to be has to have knowledge of the group process. And then the physical conditions of a group can vary. Typically for physical conditions, you have seating arrangements. So a lot of groups like AA, for example, will do like a circle so that there's no physical barriers. Everybody can see each other, and someone feels intimate without being too invasive. Sometimes though, you also have groups where people change seats. And the purpose of this is to have productive discomfort. So it kind of forces you to be vulnerable physically, not just emotionally or mentally. Sizes for groups vary, but the most effective group size would be about 4 to 12 members. The reason for this is because larger groups can limit the attention for each individual person. So the bigger the group is, the less likely it is that people will have attention that they need and they're looking for. And then you have membership. So there's open group, which is where anybody can come in at any time and anybody can leave at any time. There's not really too big of a focus on like making sure everybody's there. And then closed group means that the members are very consistent, the framework is very fixed, and it's expected that you start and stay throughout the entire group meeting. That we also have phases of a group. So there's 3 different phases. So you have the initial phase, the working phase, and the extinction phase. So in the initial phase, this is where people are getting to know each other. So a lot of the times you'll see people do like icebreakers. They'll introduce the rules to the group or the focuses, and the leader will often be the person to kind of initiate this. In the working, which is the second part, this is where the meat and potatoes of the group happens. This is the working phase. This is where you have production going on. This is where problem solving is happening. This is where vulnerability is increased because people are working together. And then you have the final termination phase. So this phase goes over the review of the goals and outcomes. And this is also where people will process feelings. And when it comes to the final termination phase, when you do get into this phase, you do want to talk about it early so that members are prepared and they can start processing. And sometimes for people, this can be a difficult phase. Next thing I have here is leadership. So leadership is a really important part of a group. We have 3 different types of leaders. So you have the autocratic leader. This leader is focused mainly on productivity. Their main strategy is usually going to be persuasion, but the morale, because they're so focused more on production, morale is low. So people aren't really interested. Sometimes people can see it as more, I keep thinking of like South Korea, like dictatorship, instead of something where everybody's participating. It's like you're following somebody. Then you have democratic. So democratic is probably the best leadership type. This involves members. This involves the focus of the leader being on member based. They share discussions. They focus on group problem solving, and this leadership type has high morale. So people are usually involved because they feel heard. And they feel like they're a part of something. And then lastly, we have laissez-faire, which I like to remember as thinking of as the laissez-faire. So not that the leader is necessarily lazy, but they're typically uninvolved. They let the group members kind of run the show kind of thing and don't really have goals. Their production is slow. And the strategy overall is somewhat undefined. So they don't really have anything specific that they do. They could go either way with persuasion, group problems, and other various strategies. But typically in laissez-faire, people that do leadership like this are kind of just there. Next, we have the different roles of a group. So there are 4 different types that we know of. There is task. So this task role focuses on group objectives. Maintenance, which enhances the process. Role balance, which is like your checks and balances, so tasks and maintenance. And then we have personal, which is fulfilling individual needs. So within the task space, there's different roles: task, maintenance, and individual and personal. So for tasks, we have the coordinator. This person focuses on ideas and relationships. The evaluator, this person examines the plan and kind of standardizes it, whether or not it's being done. And then you have the elaborator. So this person explains and expands on different ideas that are going on within the group. You also have maintenance. This group involves like an energizer. So this person is like a motivator for people. You have, I'm sorry, not energizer, compromiser. So the compromiser kind of relieves conflict. The encourager focuses on recognition for individual group members, and the harmonizer minimizes tension that's going on within the group. So they kind of focus on like keeping the group from kind of mad maxing. Next we have individuals. So these group members include aggressors, blockers, dominators, monopolizers. Monopolizers specifically will kind of take over what's going on. The help seeker, the mute or silent person, the recognition seeker, and the seductor. And then lastly, we do have the role balance. So this is where the energizer comes in, the initiator, which is outlining tasks, and then the orienter, this person maintains direction. So sometimes I think that like the leadership can also be an orienter, since the leader of a group is going to be the person, at least in a democratic group or leadership person, will kind of orient the group into the direction that they need to go into. The next thing that I need to talk about is psychodrama. So I somewhat like psychodrama. Psychodrama within a group has to do with like role playing. So for example, if you have a group that's talking about regulating their emotions, you may have a group where maybe a member is talking about what it feels like when they get angry and how to cope with those issues, or how to talk to a member in their family about how they're feeling and how to initiate the conversation and be assertive. So in psychodrama, you'll have somebody that's like the director, which is typically the leader. You also have the audience that is going to be watching, and sometimes they'll give an input. You have the protagonist, which is the person that's like the focus and who's trying to do the work. And then you have actors, so they're like the extras in this. There are a lot of benefits to doing this, and it includes safe expression of feelings, conflict resolution in controlled environments, and just it's relieving of tension. So somebody that's maybe, like I said, going through emotion regulation and learning how to express themselves properly, maybe they'll do a role play where they're learning how to talk to their parents about coming out as gay. That might be something that somebody would do psychodrama with other members to help them figure out how they're going to do it and kind of face those emotions before they have to do it in real life. And then the nurse's role in the therapeutic groups. So the nurse should have daily participation. They should also help with the tasks of the group, especially each day in the psychiatric facilities. The nurse is going to be the one deciding what they're going to do for the day, what the policy is going to be, and then planning, so patient care planning. Then you have therapeutic leadership. This includes education, assertiveness training, and group support or grief support for groups. Next, you have required skills. This is when you recognize the group's processes, understand the roles, and select the leadership styles. There's a bug, sorry. And then you have advanced practice. So nurses typically have like a master's degree when they're doing psychotherapy groups. So specifically for those groups that I said were more specialized, versus like group therapy that we do, say that group is doing like creative expression through like painting. That doesn't typically need a more specialized outlook. So yeah, that's groups, and that's group base. I don't really know how to do the role play here since it's just me for leadership. So autocratic, I guess a great example of a leader of that would be like Kim Jong-un. Like, that's kind of what I think of when I think of autocratic. The person is focused more on persuasion, on productivity. They're not really focusing on morale. Sorry, they're not really focusing on morale. They're focusing on just the productivity of the group, in this case, the country. Democratic would be like, it's like Tick Club. So this is something that I try to do, is be democratic. I try to focus on members. I try to have shared discussions, and I would like to think that the morale in our group is pretty high. But we do a lot of group problem solving through things like voting, open discussions. A lot of time, often I will ask people, is there anything you would like to bring to the floor, especially at the end of our groups. And then I like to ask anybody if there's anyone that would like to lead on different things that we have going on. So for example, sweatshirts that we're doing, Carla stepped up and wanted to be the person to do that. So trusting my members to do things like that. And then lastly, laissez-faire. So like I said, laissez-faire, these are people that are kind of uninvolved. So a great example of that would be substitute teachers that don't care about their classrooms because they're just substituting and they're just like babysitters. So some substitute teachers have like a laissez-faire type thing. Maybe the regular teacher will leave like worksheets that need to be done. I remember specifically as a kid growing up, I had a substitute that everybody loved because his thing was he would give us all of our worksheets in the beginning of the day and say, as long as you get this done by the end of the day, I don't care what you guys do. And don't die, basically. So that would be like laissez-faire. Okay, and that is therapeutic groups in my understanding of it. Thanks.